What's going on, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com. At Occupy Fantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Whatever media platform you consume content on, we're probably on it. I'm your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter is where you can find me. Co-founder and data guru here at OccupyFantasy.com. Alongside Brian, co-founder and CEO of Occupy Fantasy. Brian, how's it going?
Moose, what's happening? Week 5. As I said on Thursday's show, it's the season is flying by. Yet every single week is still filled with so much work and lots of work still to be done, and lots of season left to get some big winnings. So yeah, I'm excited, man. How you doing on Saturday?
Pretty good, yeah. Weather's was a lot nicer than it was supposed to be, so I got to enjoy some outside weather before I actually had to touch grass for a little bit today. So it's a rare occurrence of grass touching. But now we're here for Beyond the Model. And what is this show? O'Brien and I are here for about 30 minutes or so answering y'all's questions. Fantasy football, DFS for DraftKings, FanDuel, any type of betting, prop bets. If you're still one of the three people left in survivor pools, we're here to help you out with that. Anything related to football, we're here talking about. Again, we're here about 30, 45 minutes, mostly guided by the questions that you all have. So if you have questions, you just want to say hi, or you want to just listen to that, that's just fine as well. And Brian, I will kick it off. We have our Occupy Fantasy daily plug up on the website, written by our info manager, Chris Rooney. Absolutely great if you're playing here for DFS. But even if you're not, even if you're for season long and all that stuff, that very first beginning injuries to watch section is easy just to see a list of injuries and just be like, man, this week's kind of sucks. So injuries everywhere, primarily concentrated around a few teams: Indy, Giants, handful of tight ends too. Take me through just very high level. What are some of these injuries to watch this week?
Yeah, it sucks. And Chris has only covered the offensive injuries. My personal report that does the defensive injuries as well, that I will post in Discord, is like 10 pages long. It's outrageous. Everyone has talked about injuries so far this year, and this week is just piling on. I mean, you look at if you said at the beginning of the season, looking through ADP, that Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, Zamir White, Devin Singletary, Jalen Warren would all be out. Like, well, that sucks. Oh yeah, don't forget about Khalil Shakir, Romeo Dobbs, Christian Watson, Devontae Adams, Malik Neighbors. Oh yeah, and tight end we also have David Njoku, Luke Musgrave, Evan Ingram. Damn. So I will say the biggest injuries for DFS related purposes, and if you're in a season long league and maybe your league mates are sleeping, the biggest injuries are Zamir White. That means Alexander Madison will start at running back for the Raiders. We have at Pittsburgh, both Jalen Warren and Cordell Patterson is out. Najee Harris should smash. He has not smashed this year, but he should. Aaron Shamplin's their number 2 running back for an absolute deep pinch, like him on Showdown Sunday night. JT is out for Indy. Trey Sermon should lead the way there. They keep saying it'll be running back by committee, but every indication is that Trey Sermon is their number 2 running back. Joe Mixon and Pierce are out again, so it'll be Cam Akers. Khalil Shakir Moose at receiver. He is
Yeah.
out. Curtis Samuel's actually going to get an increase in slot snaps. Hasn't played really even half a game so far, but this will be the game that he does. So he's very intriguing from all angles. And then I think a lot of us drafted Green Bay wide receivers, especially Dontavian Wicks, not with the hope, but with the idea being that if any of the Green Bay receivers get banged up, Wicks will automatically see a bump in playing time. Now both Dobbs and Watson out, Wicks will be the number 2 receiver alongside Jaden Reed. Makes him one of the best plays of the week.
Yeah, and I'm just here sorting in the model by DraftKings ownership for wide receivers, and some pretty gross names at the top. Normally you see some of these studs, maybe a couple of mispriced guys, but then you just see, yeah, why is Dontavian Wicks going to be 30% owned in some of the largest contests? Like, yeah, Jaden Reed, also that as well. It's like, do I really want to stack Green Bay and eat the chalk there? I don't know. So, going to be an interesting slate. We have a couple questions here, Brian. First one from Jose Morales. He says, I know that with Malik Neighbors out, it's supposed to be next man up, which would be Wandale Robinson. But do you think Giants' offense is broken without Neighbors?
Yeah, it's already teetering on broken by giving Wandale Robinson 10 plus 3-yard targets. He might get 12 3-yard targets this time around. Slayton's going to step in, Hyatt's going to step in, but it's clear that Neighbors is different. They're also missing Devin Singletary. So yeah, the offense will be broken. Moose, you and I sat on the show last week. Everyone said Brock Bowers. Everyone said Jacoby Myers, and we warned, not saying it would happen, but that it could happen. That just because these guys are stepping into larger roles does not mean the offense will continue to function as it had. And we saw the Raiders get completely shut down without Adams and without their offensive tackle. I think the same could easily happen for the Giants here. So it's certainly a fear. And I think of all the teams that are dealing with injuries, that's probably the most fragile offensive environment without their top two players.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, if you have a certain injury and, maybe you can fill it in role and there's a cheap player, sometimes you got to look, you know, can the chef still cook? And if he can't cook, then don't trust the chef. Go to McDonald's for the week. So, I had to sneak in a quick little thing there, is not. But next question up here from Hawk Dark is, what's your thoughts on a Jags Colts stack because the Jags are ranking high in the model?
I got some ideas here for you. I got some angles and some propaganda, which I know we all tune in for. So Indianapolis, not only are they missing Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, let's look to the defensive side of the ball. They're missing their slot corner, their number one corner, Kenny Moore. They're missing their two defensive linemen, Quiddy Pay and Taekwon Lewis. That's three defensive guys, one in the secondary. Should be a massive boom. If Jacksonville cannot get off the ground this week, they are never going to get off the ground. They might as well just fire everyone right now. In addition to that, we have Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk as underperforming wide receivers. We have Brian Thomas, who has been as legit as we have tried to convey since May. So if three guys, two underperforming, one a legitimate rookie receiver, against a team that has three defensive injuries, and the pass rate and mostly just the pass rate goes up on Indy side, more completions over expectation when Flacco has been under center, as is the case for most of the time versus Richardson. It's a very, very high potential game environment for DFS. And so I'm going to look at the ownership here because I know ownership is concentrating, especially in other places. If we look at Indy side, Trey Sermon, we have a 10% projected ownership. We'll see if that continues to move up. I think a lot of his ownership will be taken by Tyrone Tracy, the backup running back for the Giants. So Sermon may go under the radar, especially with the news that there may be a running back by committee. You look at the Indy receivers, Michael Pittman's going to be highly owned, but Josh Downs, Alec Pierce will not be. And on Jacksonville's side, if we look at their underperforming wide receivers, 5% for Christian Kirk, 1% for Gabe Davis, and the best receiver of the group, Brian Thomas, 8%. That is the side I want to be on in tournaments.
Yeah, the more I look into it, it's like they didn't rank too highly in my own personal stacks. I definitely didn't like any side's definitely a lot lower. But as the week has gone by, I'm starting to like the Jacksonville side more and more. The model's picking up on it. As you pointed out, there's a handful of just little small intricacies that are just adding up over time. And Brian, it is, the first week where, four teams on bye. We do have the London game as well for early. And so we're starting to get a lot less players in our player pool. So even if the pricing is a little broken, there's still just an overall less number of players to choose from. So we do have to start getting different and doing things like that. So playing like a Jacksonville, low owned, not too low owned, not too high owned, kind of just pretty good owned. And you have something like that. That's definitely some way to get different, and I like that. That's yeah. As I look more and more into it, I'm starting to really like that stack.
It's the old three little pig stack. This one is just right with the ownership. And you mentioned this. We haven't talked about this yet, but the fact that we are into week 5, we have a London game. We have 4 teams on by 11 games on the main slate. What does that mean? That means game stacking becomes much more profitable and ends up in winning lineups much more often when we have smaller slates. And Curtis Samuel rule, cheap pieces, 3-1 stacks, adding into it, that becomes much more in play from now until weeks 14 or whatever. So start to keep that in mind. Now we can start playing most of the lineup builds that we outlined in our strategy guide, as we talk about in these shows all the time. Now is the week to start implementing moves. And honestly, it's, you and I have talked about back when we used to do the $1 Million Mission, how September is always a slow start, but then we really get into it once October hits, because I think this is the main reason, honestly, because the stack types and the Curtis Samuel pieces and the condensed ownership is where we really start to shine, especially in tournaments. So yeah, couldn't be more pumped for week 5.
Yeah, and just from a more personal standpoint, I know the first couple of weeks, we always talk about how you just mentioned it. Just the way teams are, tough to build. I've actually just been like fake. I've still been playing DFS, but been like fake building how I would for these type of weeks. And so now that the bye weeks have started, I've gotten that mindset of what I need to do, so it doesn't take me even more couple weeks to kind of get into the groove of things. So it's absolutely time to start firing this week, at least for me. So hopefully I'll see somebody at the top of the leaderboard with me. But got some more questions here. JPT, I hope you're okay with me calling you that. He says DraftKings main slate, which defense is most likely over 3 sacks and multiple turnovers? And Brian, as I sort in the model here, uh,
It should
Denver.
surprise anyone.
Yeah,
The top three, right?
yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, that seems pretty reasonable to me. The model, Denver, playing against the Raiders, Patriots playing against banged up Miami, and Seattle playing against a banged up Giants. So models picking up on that. They're all pretty popular. Uh, and so yeah, I would just stick with those three. Model's been pretty good this season on defenses.
Yeah, the model as it normally is great on defenses. Denver against the Raiders, we just talked about that situation. And I have a dog barking, so please excuse the dog barking. Hey, chill, dude. Hey, let's chill. No more
He
barking,
wants to
okay?
be on. He's really excited about talking about defenses.
I know he's fired up about Patriots defense, Seahawks defense. So Broncos against terrible LV situation. Miami backup quarterback, Giants offense without their top two players. Makes sense that those three defenses are at the top. They're probably the most likely. However, they are three of the four highest owned defenses by our projections. So just keep that in mind as you're building.
Definitely. And he does say yes. Feel free to call me JPT. Absolutely great. Love it. So uh, Pareko. Perry KO? I don't know. Tell me how to say your name. I'll say it. Start Stafford, Deontay, or Wicks as my other super flex with a rich doubtful. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, anytime a quarterback is involved, you're going to say the quarterback. So yeah, it's Matt Stafford for me.
And Tommy says not an injury, but Stevens is also benched for Gibson when we were talking about all the injuries.
Let's talk about this. Yeah, so Stevenson, one of the first players to lose a fumble in each of his team's first 4 games since like 1990 something. I think I saw. So yeah, not great. However, it's so funny because we live in the Washington area, the DMV, and obviously surrounded by Commanders fans. And so when this news came out that Stevenson has fumbled too much, he's going to be benched at least to start the game. Gibson's going to step in. Every Commanders fan texted me said, "Do they not know who Antonio Gibson is?" Because Antonio Gibson was benched multiple times throughout his tenure here in Washington for fumbling. So I don't know if Jerome Mayo just didn't see that tape, has ignored it, whatever it may be, is punishing his running back. And again, someone asked us this about, is Stevenson safe? Is Gibson safe? This could be a one drive thing. It could be an entire game thing. It could be Gibson fumbles and now Stevenson's back in, or hell, they give JaMychal Hasty run. Who knows? So I would say it's a very tentative situation, especially when you consider how bad the offense is in general. Really, large field tournament play only, or maybe showdown.
Yeah, and you mentioned Hasty. Are you putting him in any showdown lineups? I think he's 200 on the showdown. Is he? Oh, what is he on showdown? I gotta look him up.
I
But
mean, I'd be surprised
and
if he's not.
yeah, I think he is. Yeah, and I actually got signed out of the website, so I need to log back in. But yeah, so little things like that. And Brian, I know you've actually been playing the like 1 p.m., 4 p.m. showdowns in addition to the primetime slates, and little nuggets like that really help out. Just if you're playing high risk, I know the contests aren't as big as the Thursdays, Sunday nights, Monday games, but little tidbits like that. Do you think those help along the way, or is the contest just not big enough to play plays like that?
No, no. Well, it depends, right? They still have like the some contests that are $15, 20 max, 100 max, and depending on the slate. And I think it's a great bankroll building tool for those who don't want to. They want to avoid the main slates. I would encourage everyone, especially if you think you're profitable at showdown or you like building showdown lineups. You think that's a better edge for you than main slate. Yeah, I would encourage everyone to check those out on Sunday afternoons.
Perfect. And I did look up Hasty. He is actually not 200. He is $1,600 flex. But with the Patriots D ranking one of the highest in the model, little Patriots D Michael Hasty stack going there.
Hey, there we go. There we go. I'm watching 2 dogs. The one dog is going absolutely nuts. Yeah, I think he likes the idea most.
Perfect. Jack in the chat says Xavier Worthy or Zay Flowers at flex.
Yeah, I would say Zay Flowers according to projections.
And Hawk Dark says, what's your thoughts on Eric All for Cincinnati on DraftKings?
Yeah, he's been getting, I wouldn't say more run, about the same amount of run, and has been getting targeted. Seems like a guy they're going to continue to use more and more. Super cheap. I wouldn't expect like an 8 target game by any means. I've been playing him a lot in Showdown. Maybe if you're playing that game, that leads into one of the next questions: top 3 quarterback stacks this week. I do like the Baltimore and Cincinnati game. If you're correlating your tight end, I like Eric All there. So I think a low floor but cheap option should get you some points. I don't think he's going to be a guy that scores 15 or 20, But Moose, in this day and age, not many tight ends can do that.
Yeah, I mean, as a huge Cincinnati fan, that's why I got this virtual background because it's got orange a little bit. That's the best one I could find. Uh, you know, I thought it was going to be the Gesicki show all season. In off season, he was one of my highly drafted tight ends in best ball. Clearly, that's not the case. But if you can figure out a way to squeeze him in a game stack, I like it. Outside of game stacks, I don't particularly like it. Let's see here. Up next, Mo says, "Yo, yo, yo, kinda for this week, but also for the rest of the season," which is a great way to start a question. Jalen Waddle versus Jordan Addison, full PPR.
Yeah, it's Jalen Waddle is so sensitive to, and not like it's not any fault of his own, but so sensitive to who's under center, and he's going to be very limited in his production until Tua returns in Week 8, which it's in a few weeks here. It sounds like he has no symptoms, so he will return in Week 8, and you have to like Waddle rest of season as a result. For the next couple of weeks, though, Addison's probably the better play with Darnold balling out and not having a third string quarterback off the street under center.
Yeah, definitely. So we talked about talking about Scarecrow's question. Brian's top 3 quarterback stacks this week for you. He didn't ask about me, so I'll ask you, what are your 3 top stacks?
No, I want to hear yours. We're normally on the same page, so give me your top 3 quarterback stacks if you have them handy.
Yeah, so have it here on the other tab. So the Cincinnati Baltimore game is actually my number 1 stack. That get for both sides, number 1, number 2. Jacksonville, that side is high up there as well. And then I got to double check this is right, but Houston is actually up there for me.
You want some Houston propaganda moves?
I would love some Houston propaganda.
I mean, we love propaganda on the show as long as it's used appropriately and not in not in any other sense. However, Houston, how do you like these Apples moves? So Buffalo, we know Khalil Shakir's out at receiver. How about this? They're still likely without one of their top cornerbacks, Teron Johnson. They're without their strong safety, Taylor Rapp, and they're without their best defensive lineman, Ed Oliver. And while Von Miller is over the hill, still gets some productive pass rushing snaps in from time to time, he is suspended. So that is 3 starters, 3 really good starters, and a 4th rotational pass rusher that is going to be out for Buffalo. And they could still be without their middle linebacker. We'll see. It sounds like he will return, but returning from injury. So we have 3 to 4 defensive players out for Buffalo. Seems like a great time to hop on Houston. And I think Chris even talked about it in his video yesterday, which again, if you guys haven't checked out, it goes through his top plays and strategies for the slate. Pre-recorded video here on the channel. Go check it out after you watch our video here. But he mentioned Houston as well, and one of the comments asked if we were worried about Buffalo and their passing yards allowed through 4 weeks. One, very small sample, 4 games, as we know. But 2, all these defensive injuries add to it. So I think that just solidifies your ranking where you have Houston in your stacks.
And I think if you're bringing it back, I'm looking here at the Buffalo side. Just outside of James Cook, everyone's super cheap, so you can kind of pick a piece, fool around
Yep.
with it, and play some other studs elsewhere. So, any other ones that you wanted to add, Brian, to answer the question?
Yeah, obviously Washington stands out with Jaden Daniels. Without Noah Brown, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but that does give more snaps to Luke McCaffrey, who has been productive when he's been on the field. So that could be your Curtis Samuel piece from that game. Anybody else? Arizona, San Francisco. Obviously, it's a Occupy show, so we have to tout an Arizona game. So that is interesting to me as well. And then Justin in the chat, what's up? Justin says, "How about a Reed Wicks love stack?" I think even though the game environment may be whatever, not saying this one is, but like if you just ignore the game environment, you look at 2 guys who are underpriced because the other receivers are out. Why not tack on the quarterback? I know Chris talked about this in a video a couple weeks ago with Purdy and Juwan Jennings. Why not do it with Jordan Love with Wicks and Jaden Reed? So I like that idea too.
Up next, I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about this, but with Courtney's question says, "Is Dalton a decent high risk play?" Brian, I think it is. At least tell me if my thought process is right. Last year we talked about these new meta stacks. You play the terrible team in high risk. Hope they go off because you have a cheap piece. Andy Dalton, 5,400 on DraftKings, 7,100 on FanDuel. If you look at the other quarterbacks around him, they're not the best. Deshaun Watson, washed. Bo Nix, absolutely cooked. Joe Flacco, not the best. And so around that group, his stack, best kind of in that area. So I think he's way better than everyone else in those other names that I just mentioned. Saves you so much more if you want to pay up for some of these other cheap. You pay for some of these other cheap pieces that go around. Finish some crazy studs that are going to be lower owned in the slate. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that Dalton stack.
And I'm sliding in with another injury piece, Moose. Damian Lewis, their best guard, one of their best guards. They have two in Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. Lewis missed last week. He's expected to be back this week. So just another bump to their offense. They missed him a little bit last week against Cincinnati. So he will be back this week. Just another solidification there for Andy Dalton. So yeah, I like the idea, Courtney.
Pair it up with, talk about these expensive wide receivers and the expensive stud pieces. You know, what is it? Marvin Harrison Jr. only 1 to 5% on DraftKings. A piece like that, he's explosive, catch touchdown passes. Perfect piece to pair it up with something like that. Up next here, Jose says, "What do you think about Tracy Jr. as a cheap run back on a Seattle stack?"
Yeah, Tracy has looked good when he's touched the ball. He is going to be popular. We have him right now, and I imagine this will. We've seen this every week so far this season. By the time we update this on Sunday for the final time, these types of guys get increased ownership. Right now, we have Tyrone Tracy at 24% on DraftKings, 9% on FanDuel. I wouldn't be shocked if that's over 30% and over 15% on the respective sites. Yes, should get work, but there's still Eric Gray, and we have the potential for this offense to be completely flat out terrible and not run many plays. So Moose, I get it. $4,300 if he scores 4 points, it allows you, especially in smaller contests, to fit whatever. I think I'd be willing to go underweight in low risk contests, though. In large field GPPs. His median projection is going to be nice. That's why he's going to, especially for his price, 4,300 DraftKings, 4,800 FanDuel. That's why his ownership is going to be high. Does have the complete offensive environment implosion potential, which is a little scary. I think I'd rather place Trey Sermon in a better spot.
Okay, that's interesting. Nice. So up next here, question from PvP. It says, "Is Love Reed a good place to start for cash, or is Love not a cash game quarterback?" And Brian, I haven't been playing too much cash, but my thought is for cash this week. Chris talked about it in some of our staff chats as well, but like Jaden Daniels, probably like the best cash game quarterback right now. 6,800 on DraftKings, 8,700 on FanDuel. Actually ranked number one in our model. I'm curious though, Brian, if you think that that's a good start to cash games, or you think Love's cash game quarterback. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, generally you want quarterbacks who are too cheap for their projected pass attempts, or quarterbacks with dual threat ability. Jaden Daniels qualifies as the latter. Generally, you're looking for cheaper quarterbacks in cash games. Jordan Love does have the third highest projected ownership, so it's not like a bad ownership play. Just over the past couple of years, we've seen those have been the two archetypes for winning cash game quarterbacks. So Love doesn't fit that bill. However, if you can fit him around him, and there are some underpriced guys around on all positions this week, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I would say it's Daniels number one, and then probably a sub 6K quarterback on DraftKings where I would look. FanDuel's a much different story, but he is 8,200 there. So yeah, I would say he's fine as a last guy in type of thing. I wouldn't start my build with him though.
And speaking of FanDuel, Tommy's question here says, "Is Murray's price on FanDuel too low? Playable by himself, or run back with San Francisco / Debo and Mason, or play with McBride?"
Yeah, I would. I mean, again, if you're playing tournaments, you're basically stacking every time, right? We're not really playing naked quarterbacks. We want that extra correlation. And Kyler has so many options. That's the thing. It's not like he's playing with a bunch of scrubs and has to get there on his rushing. He could easily throw the McBride or Harrison or like the Dortch Torch or Michael Wilson. So yeah, I think you pair him up with one of those guys. San Francisco obviously has plenty of run back options. Jordan Mason is the best. Period. Yeah, I think you stack them up.
And Chandler here says, or actually, let's go back to Byron. He says, "I'm thinking of fading the Packers pass catching when Josh Jacobs on DraftKings for single entry."
This is a good point. So Byron, that's very sharp. We talk about pivots and DFS, but a lot of people don't think about pivots in the way you just described it. I think it's a really good idea. Obviously, if the Packers pass catchers fail, there's a good chance that if they do fail, it's because Josh Jacobs is taking most of the work on the ground or getting the rushing production. Now, understand that those guys are underpriced and they could still get there on volume alone, even if they don't score touchdowns. However, Josh Jacobs. Is underperforming his opportunity. We don't have any official underperforming running back metrics, but Mike Clay over at ESPN has the expected fantasy points, as does PFF, many other sources. And Jacobs has not scored what he should have scored so far based on his opportunity. And he hasn't looked bad doing it. So to me, it feels like a little bit of variance not going in his way. So I think it's a really good pivot. You get Josh Jacobs at, let me see here. On DraftKings, Josh
Is
Jacobs.
64?
Yeah, 6,400, 12 to 13%, which is a little higher than I expected, honestly. But either way, it's a good pivot when those other guys are 30%. So I like that idea.
And then Chandler's question here says, trade Stroud and Brooks for Gino and ETN. My other running back is CMC for Rashad White, Brooks Henry. I also have Purdy, so I kind of see it as Brooks for ETN 6 point passing TD PPR.
I mean, why would you draft Brooks and then hold him until now, and he's about to return, and then you trade him? That's what I don't understand. His price was baked into him missing the first 4 to 6 weeks. I'm not going to hold Brooks for 4 weeks and then bail on him, especially when ETN's in a potential committee himself. I would certainly hold on to Jonathan Brooks in that situation.
And question here from Mr. Grapefruit says, are you guys into Bo Melton in DFS? It's $3,300 price tag on DraftKings. And Brian, are you on him? I know he's like one right now projected like a couple percent, 1%, something. I imagine that'll go up a little higher, but are you on him are you on him this week?
Chris and Chuck jokingly drafted, maybe not so jokingly, but they were like, all right, we've drafted every 18th round pick. This was like in May or June. It's like we've drafted every 18th round pick on underdog. Who else can we possibly draft? And somehow there was like a 3-day stretch of Bo Melton discussion. And I think one of them did draft Bo Melton. All that being said, Melton has been productive on the field. Go search some tweets out there about his yards per route run. Obviously unsustainable numbers, but he's been productive when he's been out there. And yeah, qualifies as Curtis Samuel piece, qualifies as leverage versus the other receivers on Green Bay, and has been a productive guy. So yeah, I think you have to be interested. Obviously, probably a high risk play only. But yeah, he's an interesting leverage piece versus the Dontavian Wicks and Jordan and Jaden Reed chalk.
Yeah, and again, if you're playing Showdown, I think he's 2,000, 2,800, 3,000, at least under 3,000. So
2, 3, 4, 6, 8,000. I don't know.
he's something thousand over on DraftKings. So potentially a piece there as well. And Justin says, does Kincaid get a decent bump with Shakir out?
He should if they stop using him like freaking Ray McLeod. Use him downfield some. You would think so. He should. Shakir's been great when he's gotten the ball, and they've been targeting him a lot. So you would think Kincaid would get him up. It does make some sense.
And Hawk Dark says, what's your thoughts on Sermon for 3-entry max DraftKings?
Number 2 in the model. We'll see if this changes. We'll see if the ownership bumps. If he gets up to like 15, 20%, I won't be as interested. But if we get him at 10%, no vulturing from Anthony Richardson, I love it, dude. I mean, here's the thing. And I'm trying not to be biased here because I was so big on Trey Sermon coming out of college. Completely flopped. Sometimes it takes guys a while, right? Went to San Francisco, the shenanigans, then went to Philly, got cut, and it's like, all right, this dude's career is over, UFL bound. Comes back in Indy and looks good and earned the number 2 job. So I think we give him a shot here, and the model's picking up on it pretty heavily. So I like it.
This is how you know he's cooked, Brian. I will say though, it's like if you go to somebody's Wikipedia page, and normally if they're actually good, it's them out on the field in the NFL. But his Wikipedia profile is still at Oklahoma in 2019. So
Not
maybe someone can go ahead and take a picture of him, get his profile picture updated there.
Yeah, dude, can we get a Trey Sermon in a Colts jersey? I mean, Christ, he played for the 49ers for a little bit. Can we at least get a Trey Sermon NFL picture? Number 27, right? Come on, dude. I can Google it right now. Just put him in there. He's got dreads flowing. Get him a real picture.
Byron here has a good question. He says, is it counterproductive to include a running back in stacks, looking at a Lamar stack with Zay Flowers and Justice Hill or Derrick Henry?
Yeah, typically, right? Because you think about what you're trying to accomplish with stacks. You want your quarterback to go off. You want pass catchers to come with them. You want guys who catch passes. I think Justin Hill makes way more sense than Derrick Henry because we saw him involved in the passing game in 2 of the 4 Ravens matchups so far. Henry doesn't make a ton of sense because if he's getting there, it's on the ground, which is taken away from Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson, as we saw in their Sunday night game as recently this past weekend with Buffalo. So it would have to be an extreme pass catching running back, but generally it's the construction that you normally want to avoid.
And Jose says, talk me into Sutton because he fits in a lineup I'm building, but I don't know. I think it's kind of sketchy. That was exactly my thought process last week. And are you still on him again this week, Brian? I think he's technically underperforming.
Still underperforming, facing the lifeless Raiders. Let's get him back in there. Much easier matchup this time around. He still caught a touchdown against Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed last week. Not facing those guys this week, and he's still underperforming. The number 1 wide receiver for Denver. I don't need much talking into him. He's underperforming. That is enough. Now, a much easier matchup. Sign me up.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into to Negu's question. Nick Sutton plus everything else you can fit. Are
I
you
mean, all right. Now we're getting crazy. We're talking about Bo Nix. Maybe that's where I draw the line. Uh, but it is a new meta stack move, so I don't hate it as much. I think this could be a game where Javante gets off, but if not, Bo Nix maybe throws a passing touchdown after 4 weeks of zero passing touchdowns. So maybe this is the week for Bo Nix to throw a passing touchdown. No, he got one last week, obviously, with Courtland Sutton, but he's only got one through
yeah.
5 games or 4 games. So
Yeah,
maybe he'll double his production.
and Byron says I like Sutton this week with Bo Nix, so maybe there's a little sharp Bo Nix action going on. Maybe he gets a little more than one
Hey,
2%.
the old trademarked YouTube chat stack.
Brace fan 22 says, "What's your thoughts on Kenneth Walker?" And Brian, he's uh, kind of high up there. Is he sixth? He's super popular. Um, what's your thoughts on Ken?
Yeah, he looks like the classic running back who is popular, rightfully so. Has been getting lots of opportunities. Definitely has overperformed his touchdown production. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. But even his median expectation has been great for his price. So yeah, I think the guy again top 6 in the model, like you said, Moose. So certainly a guy that we are interested in against a team that could be lifeless or lacked any chance to move the ball on offense. Should give him more opportunity. I think it's a good idea.
Somehow he's also another person with a college profile picture on Wikipedia. So
All right, dude, come on.
Wikipedia editors are slacking.
Yeah, dude, who's in charge of this? Because come on, community, get on this. Who else? Peyton Manning have a college picture? Like, come on.
That's high school for him, actually. But
Yeah, I
uh,
know.
let's see here. Another question here. QB and running back that highly correlate.
I think he's just commenting that quarterback and running back do highly correlate. Yes, they do. But generally, we do not see them in winning lineups on FanDuel and DraftKings together.
Cool. So we've hit the 30-minute mark. Usually here between 30 and 45 minutes. If you guys have questions, keep them coming. I do want to just say really quick, Brian. Survivor picks. I honestly, since I've been knocked out, haven't really looked too much into it. Do you have any notes or anything you want to talk to people about Survivor picks with?
Again, if you made it this far, you probably don't want to listen to us because you've somehow navigated all the bombs. Seattle is the most popular expected team this week, as we just talked about them this entire show, basically. But 30 to 40% projected ownership in larger survivor pools, much higher if you're in smaller contests. This is the second best week to use them. They are the highest money line on the week, second highest money line on the week. Not fault anyone for using Seattle. Washington is going to be popular. It is the best week to use them technically, but they're only minus 150 on the money line. They probably should be higher against the Browns. So that alone sketches me out. I'm not sure I would take Washington this week. If you want a safe, lower owned pick, it's San Francisco. They have the highest money line, third best week to use them. They're minus 360. Only 10 to 15% projected survivor ownership. And then after that, you're still getting pretty sketchy. Minnesota's kind of popular. Chicago. Uh, I would just lock in Seattle or San Francisco. I think Moose and ride the wave because there can't be that many people left. So let's just we're only in week 5, so I think I would pick one of those two.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, prop bets is in the title. Uh, I don't know if you have anything handy for you right now, but I'm curious if we could just give maybe one or two prop bets that we kind of like and, for the people.
Oh God, I am not prepared. However, given all of the Buffalo injuries, given Diggs in a revenge game, let's go Diggs over 5.5 receptions and or Diggs over his receiving yard number. And that'll be my play. It's a not necessarily narrative based, but it is an injury based move. So I'll say Stephon Diggs over 5.5 receptions minus 150 or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know. I have no odds up right now.
And his receiving yards, I think, is 55 and a half. Let me
I think I like
see.
that better.
54 to 56. Old places have somewhere else there, but yeah, around that. For me, I am pulling it up here, and the one that I actually like, give it to me, is I'm trying to find which one has the best uh, thing here. I'm not going to go attempts. I'm actually going to go completions. Jaden Daniels, because he doesn't miss. So give me over 19 and a half. Looks like every book has it 19 and a half. It's shaded toward the under, so I like the over, so you can get minus 105, minus 110 somewhere, some places. So that's gonna be my pick.
All right, I like that. I like that. Given I prepared for 3 seconds, I like your pick much better. So We'll wrap at that as the topic of the show. Uh, we'll be in Discord later if you guys have any once we formalize some props.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into. I will say we do have the Occupy Fantasy Discord. Some pretty cool changes coming soon to it. Maybe not changes, but enhancements. It's probably the better word for it. So yeah, occupyfantasy.com/discord. You can find out how to join it. Open to all members. You know, it says if you're a yearly member, you get access. But if you scroll down a little bit farther, it says if you read this far, you can still get access to it if you reach out to us. So uh, go ahead and
Dude,
do
people
that.
don't read it. People don't read anything. No one knows that if you just ask us, you get Discord access. Guarantee we don't get anybody even ask us after the show.
Yeah, basically just ask us and you're good. Occupyfantasy.com/discord is where you can find it. But yeah, so Brian, so let's knock out these last handful of questions. Then I'll go ahead and take us out of here. Byron, what are your guys' favorite stacks for this week? My official recommendation, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Jacksonville. And Brian, what is yours?
Yeah, those Arizona, San Francisco, Houston, Washington, Seattle, Green Bay. Like half the teams.
And for full transparency, the actual top stacks, according our official recommendations from the Occupy Fantasy Daily Plug, Baltimore, Houston, San Francisco, Washington, Seattle, and Green Bay. But go ahead
There you
and
go.
check that out if you after the show. And let's see, the big one says which Houston running back will get the most work.
Yeah, so last week they split snaps. We expect Pierce to be out once again, so it's going to be Akers running the lead. 15 carries last week to just 2 for Dario Agumbawale. Agumbawale obviously ran twice the amount of routes. So Akers the lead back. Agumbawale is a passing down back. Depends on the game script here. It could get out of hand with Buffalo, and we could see Dari play more. So it is a precarious situation.
For me, at least, I'm fading that. Got burned by it last week, and I saw the way they're using him. I don't think in the way lineups are being built for me, he's not neither one are really making it into my lineups.
Yeah.
And is that Ultimate? Yeah, I can read. Ultimate says thoughts on a Dolphin stack. Are you playing them in anywhere, Brian?
Boy, you're braver than I am if you want to play Tyler Huntley after his performance. Listen, we got to give people propaganda whenever possible. They get Teron Armstead back, their best offensive tackle. That honestly has a massive effect on their offense, probably a bigger effect than going from Skylar Thompson to Tyler Huntley. If you want to do it, Tyreek Hill's an underperforming wide receiver. You want to go Tyler Huntley, Tyreek Hill, and you want to run that back, probably with no one from the Patriots. I won't fault anyone for doing that. I mean, I will fault you, but it's not the worst idea.
You mean you don't want to run it back with Demario Douglas, 4,400,
I mean,
less than
we
1%
could do.
owned on FanDuel, on
I
DraftKings?
could run it back for the starter for one drive, Antonio Gibson, and he gets benched when he fumbles. We could do that too.
Definitely. Um, and Politia says, would like to know if Ken Walker plus Tyrone Tracy would be contrarian on a combination basis.
Yeah, both independently popular, but are people playing running backs in the same game? Is I think is the question that they're getting at. I gotta be honest, I haven't done too much research on that, but I think most people don't actively avoid it, and most lineup builders or simulations won't necessarily avoid it either. So you might see a slight difference, a slightly lower amount compared to what two random guys with that ownership would have. But I don't think it's a material difference as far as combinations go. Could be very wrong there. If anyone knows the answer, please correct me in the comments later. But I wouldn't think that would be the case.
And Chandler, the guy who mentioned Brooks in the trade earlier, he says someone dropped Brooks, so I dropped Mostert for him. We are capped at 5 running backs, so I would have to give him a running back. Would you do Rashad White instead, or you just don't like ETN going forward?
I mean, I like ETN, but the whole thing is I'm not holding Brooks and then trading him before he comes back at all. And maybe that turns out smart and he sucks this year. Possible. I would say I like ETN over Rashad White if that's the question that he's asking. So.
Question here from Mark says, do I drop Mark Andrews for Dallas Goddard? And Brian, I think I would drop Mark Andrews for the Stanley Cup that I have here.
Yes. I don't know what league you're in that Dallas Goddard is available, but that is a very sick 2-team league. Definitely drop a 6th offensive lineman for Dallas Goddard.
Yeah. Yeah, he says, someone drop Goddard. Please send me an
Yeah,
invite
dude.
next season.
Drop anyone. A friend of mine who's in a casual league said someone dropped Trey McBride. He says, should I drop Kyle Pitts for Trey McBride? I said, dude, drop anyone for Trey McBride. And that goes here, Mark, with Dallas Goddard. If he's available, drop Andrews or anyone else you need to get him.
bunch of people here in the comments as well saying thank you. So we thank you all for joining us, asking questions. I know not everyone's available on a Saturday. We appreciate you spending time watching us, whether it's live or on the replay as well. But the last question that will take us out of here is from Chinegu, who says Lamar and Henry with Chase and Higgins, 2x2 stack. Do you think that's too much for one game, Brian?
Said it before. I don't think it's too much for one game, but I'm not pairing Lamar and Henry when basically their outcomes are anti-correlated. Henry gets there on the ground, Lamar gets there through the air on the ground himself. Doesn't make a lot of sense that they get there together. They both score 30. I don't think it's gonna happen. So I would say no. I would say Lamar and a receiver and Chase or Higgins, or Lamar by himself and Chase and Higgins, but not those two together.
Okay.
As they win the Millie tomorrow.
Because Henry actually throws a touchdown pass to Lamar.
Yeah, to Lamar.
Yeah. But yeah, so that'll do it for this week's show, Beyond the Model with Moose and Brian. Again, the Occupy Fantasy Daily Plug is up. OccupyFantasy.com/Discord to figure out how to get access to our Discord or just ask. And there's MMA later. Got the plug up, model up for that. All the good stuff you normally see on a weekend is up on the website. If you need some more questions, we have Discord, Twitter, X, the comment section down below. If you really like what you saw here and you want to see more, definitely go ahead and like and subscribe. We're getting really close to 10K. We're going to do a really awesome giveaway, really incredible giveaway when we hit 10K. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But until next time, next week, next Saturday, Moose and Brian from OccupyFantasy.com. Have a good night.